You're welcome back to the conversation. On Monday, a group of Zimbabwean opposition activists, including a lawmaker, appeared in court seeking bail after they were arrested at the weekend by police who raided the house of an MP for an alleged unlawful gathering. The hearing is set to continue on Tuesday and was marked by a media blackout as the country prepares for crucial national elections later this year. Reports indicate that journalists were harassed and most were barred from covering the proceedings by armed anti-riot police officers.
Only 2 journalists from state-run media were allowed access to the courtroom. Rights groups and opposition parties have expressed concern over the government's increased crackdown on dissent as the country heads into elections. The arrested activists are members of the Citizens Coalition for Change, CCC, the largest opposition party led by Nelson Chamisa. Let's hear from the spokesperson here.
Strongest of terms. We want peace, we want elections, we don't want war. We don't want a repeat of these incidents. And we've said time and again that ZEC has a constitutional obligation under Section 156 to ensure that mechanisms are in place to avoid political violence. And yet they've been completely quiet. Also, the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission have an obligation to ensure that such incidents of violence don't take place. And yet, despite various engagements and written submissions by us to them, including dossiers, they do nothing. Same goes for the Human Rights Commission. And as for the police service, we've repeatedly said that ZANU PF must stop abusing the police service to achieve its ends. We call for an independent, impartial investigation into the violence that took place against our members in Murewa. And it's not enough for the police service, frankly, to just say we're investigating, because that's exactly what they said about Acton Mashayika in July. Nothing has happened. They said they'd come back to us with a full investigative report after the killing of Mo Blessing Ali. To date, nothing has happened. To date, the killers of Mboneni Nunge have not been held to account. How many more CCC members must be beaten, maimed, or killed before state institutions carry out their constitutional obligation? This does not bode well for what we want, which is a free, fair, and credible election.
Now, join us to discuss this and to shed more light, we have Dr. Wurayayi Zembe. He is the president of the Democratic Party. He joins in from the Zimbabwean capital, Harare. We also have Tafadzwa Mugwadi, ZANU PF, Director for Information and Publicity, also joins in from the Zimbabwean capital, Harare. A warm welcome to you both, gentlemen, and thanks for joining us in the conversation.
Virtual participant.
Thank you, Fred.
Will I conduct elections?
Now, I'd like to start with...
Greetings,
yes.
Greetings to you, the host, and participants and fellow participants.
We're happy to have you. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Zembe. Can you provide more information on the specific charges against the opposition activists who were arrested? And does the Zimbabwean constitution criminalize attending private meetings?
Thank you very much. I haven't yet had sight of the charge sheet, but generally perception is that 2 days ago, members of the Citizens Coalition for Change, a legitimate political party in Zimbabwe, were arrested while attending a private meeting at the house of a member of parliament for Budiliro constituency. And in a military style, the members were ill-treated and bundled in police vehicles. And now we are told they are in custody to appear in court. This really indicates clearly there is empirical evidence that Zimbabwe is in a state of war at the advocacy of the current ZANU PF government in Zimbabwe, because it is using the military, the police, to invade private property and to ban civil political activities. This is contrary to Section 67 of the current Zimbabwe Constitution Amendment number 20, Act of 2013, which purports to give political rights in a multi-party competitive democracy. But Section 86 of the same document wrote or withdraws the same right. So we are back to square one. You will know that for the past 142 years, Zimbabweans are struggling to create a democracy in this country, where we have a civilian appointed government through peaceful, free and fair elections, which we are supposed to be holding in within the next 6 months. But as Democratic Party, we have long ceased to use the word multi-party election with regard to the impending election. Our terminology is we are engaged in an electoral struggle. And this time around, electoral struggle began in 1980. And prior to that, for 100 years, Zimbabweans embarked on a democratic struggle, which was military driven, among other things. So the ZANU PF government for the past 43 years has continued the same rampant violence. That is my current observation. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Zembe. And I would like Tafadzwa Mugwadi, who is the ZANU PF Director for Information and Publicity, to have the floor right now. Now, you've heard the allegations leveled against the ZANU PF, and from reports we saw that these activists from the CCC were arrested and bundled by the police. Can you provide more information on why these people were arrested by the police?
Firstly, I think I need to make this very clear. It is not in the habit of our political organization and the ruling party, ZANU PF, as you might be aware, to discuss or start debating matters before the courts. That's literally sub judice, and I'm sure you agree with me about that. Secondly, you must also appreciate that I'm not the spokesperson of the Zimbabwe Republic Police. There is a clear communication structure there, and I'm sure it has issued itself out in terms of the reasons for those arrests, and which they have justified, of course, from the provisions of the same Constitution and the Criminal Codification and Reform Act of the Republic. So all that I'm just saying is that it is not in our habit to always want to involve ourselves over matters of policy. Those are matters that take place independent of our feelings, our opinions, our ideas as ZANU PF. Remember, the Zimbabwe Republic Police is also a constitutional organ. It's a state organ, not a party organ, as it were. What we pity attempts by the speaker from the other side, and of course, the spokesperson for the Citizens Coalition for Change and the entire tiny political grouping there, who wanted to characterize those arrests as targeted for election purposes or for political purposes, as it were. What I must make very clear, my dear sister from the other side, is that one of the cardinal principles of the application of law in Zimbabwe, and I think in every jurisdiction, is such that we are all equal before the law. That means the question of rank and file in society or any political organization doesn't come on play. If this director were to be found to be reasonably in a position to commit a crime, I will be arrested just as much as those other people have been arrested also in the ruling party. I'm sure you know ministers.
So Tafadzwa, are you saying that members of ZANU PF don't get preferential treatment by the state security apparatus? Because if you look at the trajectory in the last few years, there's always a tendency for the police to be high-handed in the treatment of opposition politicians and also supporters of the opposition. Now, let me come to my question. Do you have any concerns about the upcoming national elections in Zimbabwe being free and fair? And what measures are being taken to ensure that the process is fair, transparent, and an improvement from the last time Zimbabweans went to the polls?
Actually, I disagree with you, and respectively, your characterization of the manner in which arrests are made in Zimbabwe or policy in general is administered is completely distorted. not factual, and of course, very biased and needlessly so. And I don't know.
But we do follow the news. I mean, we do follow.
I think you should allow me to speak here. I don't think you have been interjecting the other speaker from the other side. How does that benefit this interview? That every time I want to respond, you should be interjecting me. If you wanted to speak, then you can continue.
You have the floor, please.
You have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. That's much more respectful. I'm saying your characterization is very distorted. It is false, it is misinformed, and needless. Needless in the sense that where you are geographically, it means really you should not be in a position to raise those allegations, to say policing in Zimbabwe is administered in such a way that those in government or the ruling authorities are preferred. You should know, if you are quite very much investigative and thorough in your research before you opine publicly, that we have ministers who have served jail in this country under the Second Republic. You know the former Minister of Energy called Samuel Ndenge, who served 2 years in jail and was only released last year after serving his jail sentence in terms of matters involving corruption. You know the former Minister of Health who was arrested, and his cases are before the courts, Mr. Obadiah. So all that I'm just saying is that on what basis are you suggesting that policing in Zimbabwe is administered in such a way that ruling authorities are preferentially treated? All that you should know, rather, is that we have a dangerous opposition that campaigns on a tag of victimhood. They have nothing to offer to the electorate. They know that we are set to have elections this year. They have nothing tangible to deliver to the people. No goods at all. Remember, these are people who are in charge of cities. They are the mayors and councillors and city fathers in our big cities. But those cities are reeling of sewage. They have no water flowing from our pipes. They have a lot of potholes in their roads, and the roads are in bad shape. It's rubbish and garbage all over. You don't want to subject that to discussion, to interrogate the conscience of opposition MPs, but you would want to have us focus all day about false flag allegations of violence. You know the events that happened in Mugwadi, I think just quite recently, where elderly villagers were being flogged by young people. Those young people have been arrested. They are in custody, as I'm speaking right now, 3 of them. Notwithstanding that some sections of the media were saying those youths will not be arrested because somebody was pushing forward to have those youths referred to as ZANU PF supporters when there's no evidence to that effect. But what is hype about is that they're in jail, they're in custody. So all that I'm just saying is, we know that the opposition has no strategy except playing victimhood in the eyes of people. And what they expect to salvage from that is a sympathy vote. But ZANU PF, unlike them, we have got roads to accomplish. We have started the program of roads. We have started the program of refacing our infrastructure to modernize it. We are playing a very critical role as a ruling party in government in terms of providing inputs to our farmers and our people. Those are the tangible things that we will campaign and take to the ground.
All
the
right.
opposition
Thank
is
you so
not
much.
what they have.
Thank you, Tafadzwa. Of course, you've given your opinion on this, and I'd like to categorically state that on this broadcast, the conversation would like to give a fair representation. That's why we have both a representative of your party, the ZANU PF, and also a representative of the Democratic Party. And I'd like to bring in our next guest, that is ZimbabweANDWurayayi Zembe. Now, Dr. Zembe would like to still understand the political climate and the status of the people who have been arrested in Zimbabwe.
Well, it is really tragic that in the 21st century we have a political grouping in the name of ZANU PF, which is constituting the current government structure in Zimbabwe and abusing state apparatus to violate the fundamental political rights of fellow Zimbabweans. Every day on ZBC, called Zimbabwe Broadcasting Television Station and radio, we hear ZANU PF broadcasts. They hold meetings wherever they want, both private and public. We have never witnessed a meeting that was disrupted like what happened a couple of days ago, the ZANU PF meeting. So here we have a grouping of people who do not understand the philosophy of civilian rule, the role that the elections play in the appointment of a legitimate democratic government. nation. And I must point out that as my colleague Tafadzwa was talking, he deliberately diverted issues in a demagoguery manner. You see, I think we need to state that from where you are as our host, this is international discourse. The international discourse can never be limited to the parameters of Zimbabwe's national borders. The question of political rights transcends all constitutional beliefs and documents. It has become an international right that if the political rights of a citizen of Zimbabwe, just a single citizen of Zimbabwe, is violated in this country, then it means the whole world must stand to defend the political rights of that Zimbabwe. Tafadzwa has as much rights as myself and everybody else. And a government of the day should provide free, fair, clean, legitimate elections so that civilians can engage themselves in peace and happiness and appoint a civilian government. And all institutions, security institutions of the state, must take leave and join other citizens in appointing an election, because they also have a right to vote as citizens of this country, including those who reside in the diaspora, the African diaspora and the worldwide diaspora. This is our time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zembe. Because we're fast running out of time, I'd like to introduce our third guest on this discourse. And thank you very much for pointing out that our geographical location does not limit our knowledge of events outside where we are. Now, I'd like to bring in Linda Masarira. She's the president of the Labour, Economists and African Democrats. She's joined us live via telephone from Zimbabwe. Good evening to you, Linda.
Good evening, how are you?
Now, Linda, what's the position of your organization and your response to the Zimbabwe police's actions during the arrest of opposition activists, and what implication does it have on the rule of law in Zimbabwe?
I think, first and foremost, our view has to understand that in Zimbabwe, every political party should actually notify the Zimbabwean public police of any political meeting or political gathering. That is the law of the land. Even us as Labour, Economists and African Democrats, when we want to have meetings, we notify the police as the protocol in the laws of this land. Unfortunately, my actual comrades in the Triple C are ones that violating the procedures, and when they violate the procedures, they are arrested and they use that to sympathy and to try and demonize this country. And we should be clear that every country has got its own rules, laws, and protocols, and that is supposed to be followed. Yes, sometimes our police react with heavy-handedness, which is totally unacceptable. But we also expect Triple C activists and the citizen political movement to just follow the law to the letter.
Linda, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I was speaking, you couldn't hear me.
Yes, go on, please.
Okay. Yes, I was explaining how every political party is supposed to notify the police when they are having any political gathering. It has been the norm since the days of the FBC, and then after the split, the Triple C, that they willingly do not notify the police of this meeting, so that they can found that they've been abused or that they arbitrary arrest, but we are not complying with the laws of the land. I mean, if we are opposition political parties, it doesn't mean that we have to oppose the laws of the land or what we are supposed to do in regards to law and order. What type of investigation would we be proceeding for people to vote for us if we cannot comply to the existing laws of the land? I think this is something that the world needs to know. We have seen a repetitive state managing of abduction, political violence, etc., where you find some opposition elements actually trying to set up an agenda where they know that if they do a particular thing, the police will get in a certain manner. But going forward, what we need to do is to make sure that we preach peace, nurture a political economy that is peaceful, and we stop this breakstanding for order to liberate, to gain sympathy or to gain support from Western donors in the name of human rights violations. I think we've got to a stage where we've divided the country so much with toxicity and polarity, and it's not to stop. Everyone has got the right to campaign, but let's campaign as a stipulated guideline. Let's comply to the laws of the land that are there. And since we continue having these incidences of political violence,
Linda,
etc., what I do not appreciate about press is the denial of bail of the people who are arrested during the weekend, because the bail is a universal right. They're supposed to be granted right to bail.
Linda, I believe you've probably heard your views, and you're talking about the right for political parties to express themselves during these elections, not just political parties, but also opposing voices. Now, quickly, I'd like to bring in Tafadzwa quickly, and the elections are just barely a month away, even though we've still not heard of the particular date for the elections. You've heard all the allegations going on there. What are the preparations towards these elections?
Yes, I'm saying I don't know exactly what they are talking about, and all the accusations are completely misplaced. You know, the elections in Zimbabwe are conducted by a Chapter 12 institution called the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. It is that body that prepares election and not ZANU PF. So when you hear them talking, you would think as if, you know, they present themselves as if they would want to run the elections themselves. And where have you ever heard that where political parties seek to want to run the commission that administers the elections to which they are players? That is neither here nor there, and I think it's unheard of. And secondly, you know, the dates for elections have not yet been put in place, and as a country, literally, no one can climb on top of a mountain and says that the elections have started in Zimbabwe. How does the elections begin when, in fact, how do elections begin when the president has not proclaimed the dates for the elections? What is clear is that there are people who are very desperate to discredit those elections because they know that
what are the efforts being done to discredit these allegations? How is the atmosphere conducive enough to make sure that opponents and opposing factors are free to air their opinions?
You know, literally, I really don't know how I should respond to these people, because the majority of them even here on this platform, I don't know how you fetched them and where you fetched them, because I don't.
But they have valid concerns. I mean, Zimbabweans are complaining that, you know, the atmosphere in the country is not conducive for opposition, that the government is less tolerant of opposition. But we don't have time. We'll probably do a part 2 for this. Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady, for being a part of the conversation. We'll fast run out of time. Thank you for being a part of today's conversation. We do appreciate your contributions. See you next time. I'm Gbenga Aborowa.
And I'm Rita Omodia. Bye-bye.